Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Cleantech. It's a roundup of the week's biggest stories you need to know in climate and clean energy in 15 minutes or less. Today is Friday, August 23rd, 2024. Summer's almost over. I'm Renewable Energy World Editor-in-Chief Jon Engel. Jon Reed from CNET will be joining us shortly. But for now, I'm joined once again by Cleantech PR veteran Mike Casey of TigerCom, who's been getting plenty of sun the last few months and is ready for fall. How are you, Mike?
Hey, pal. You know, I'm kind of bummed you're not going to be at RE+. We're going to tape 2 episodes of this show, and you're sending Paul Gerke, who's got a lot more charisma than you. And my fear is that Clarion and Renewable Energy World are going to increase the pressure on me to make this the Mike Casey show and just move you to being the air guitar player in the in-house band. And
sure,
Paul's
well,
going to replace you.
If he's too good, I'll just fire him because I'm his boss. No, I'm just kidding. He is very good. He comes from a very long career in journalism and did a bunch of really cool things at Network News and NBC and the list goes on. So he'll be a addition. He does have a lot of charisma. He's a fun time. So that introduction to this audience at RE Plus will be great. He'll probably be sprinkled in future episodes as well. And as soon as my community service runs up, maybe he'll even take the helm. Who knows? That's probably something we'll talk about after the debut.
So you're leaving me. That's what you're saying. You're
eventually we all leave, Mike. One day we all leave. This show cannot go on in perpetuity, for eternity. So at least from what I know, we're going to be doing this for a very long time. But who knows? It's nice to have a bench too. It's good to have someone when, the daycare closes or I'm traveling or I get sick or I'm way too busy to spend 15 minutes with Mike Casey every week. No, but I love doing it. And we appreciate all of you for listening and send in those story recommendations and nominations for Cleantecher of the Week to rew@clarionevents.com. Mike, I don't think I need to say this, but I do really enjoy doing this. And you are a good friend. So I don't want anyone to listen to this after a few episodes and be like, God, that guy's kind of a jerk. Poor Mike Casey. He's such a sweet man. All right.
Do not diminish the sympathy that I try to engender, however falsely. Okay.
Yeah.
Just let me get all the sympathy I can get. All right. Let's go to story number 1. Financial Times. 3 writers: Ken Zabrian, Camilla Hodson, and Jana Tashinsky. Big tech's bid to rewrite the rules on net zero. Cue conspiracy music theory. But go ahead, John.
Not just conspiracy. I think there is some validity to the story. I think it's an important story to be talking about. We've gotten into this corporate procurement of renewable story before, and our offsets doing as much as they could. So big tech companies like Amazon and Meta claim to be net zero because they purchase renewable energy certificates from clean energy projects to offset their carbon pollution from their energy use. So they do that basically on an annual basis. They say, we used this much electricity, we bought this much clean electricity. However, these offsets might not directly reduce their real world carbon pollution because the lower power mix they draw from still includes fossil fuels. Location matters when calculating real world pollution. So for example, a data center connected to a coal dependent grid, say in Tennessee, and another on a cleaner grid in California could buy the same certificate to offset 1 megawatt hour of electricity, even though one data center is driving much more reduction in pollution than the other. And you simply cannot offset dirty energy by generating renewable power at a different time of the day. So there's this growing concept of 24/7 carbon-free electricity, Mike, which you're going to talk about a little bit more here. But I do think this is an important thing for us to acknowledge, even though big tech has been critical in this sector growing in recent years.
All right, you just stole my first point here. Let's give
credit. I don't read the scripts. I just see John talk.
These tech companies, we should remember, were among the first DCPs, direct corporate buyers of clean energy, and they drove Cleantech's growth during the Trump years. On the other hand, critics reading the story could defensively say that these companies are attempting to buy a first-place trophy for a race they didn't really run. For these certificates to be truly effective, they need to prove what's called additionality. That's the clean energy projects wouldn't have happened without the support from the certificate buyers. So reform discussions have started, and they sparked disagreements among the big tech companies, which have organized themselves into kind of two camps. Google and Microsoft believe certificates should be sourced from the same grid an hour of the day to ensure accurate accounting of pollution. Amazon and Meta believe certificates should be sourced from different locations, allowing companies to invest in clean energy where it is most impactful, such as on a coal-dependent grid. It's quite the challenge here at a time when load is exploding from AI. John, story number 2.
Well, and just one last comment on that one, Mike, because I do want people to look up some interesting research by RMI from, I believe it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, about the difference between hourly matching and 24/7 CFE and annual matching of, these renewable energy credits. It's pretty stark. And I think the conclusion from those reports is that these clean energy certificates, they do benefit the climate and help reduce pollution, but not nearly to the clip that these companies think they are. All right. Story number 2. This is from Ella Nilsson and Nimi Prince with CNN, titled "EVs are starting to overtake gas-powered cars in a surprising place." We don't always go international news, Mike, but I thought this one was interesting this week.
It is cool. It is really cool. This year, Ethiopia, the country on the Horn of Africa, became the first and only nation to ban the import of all gas-powered vehicles. Now the country is seeing a major uptick in EV adoption. This ban has also encouraged local EV production, making EV prices much cheaper. The switch is especially meaningful given that, unlike in most markets where EVs are taking off, Ethiopia gets 96% of its electricity from non-polluting hydropower. However, EVs are mostly adopted by high-income groups in this country, as they kind of are elsewhere. As a result, some people are pushing for the Ethiopian government to invest in electric public transportation to provide efficient vehicles to all income groups, which is kind of cool. John, what do you think?
Whenever I read stories like this, all I think about is, what if we just had access to unlimited hydropower? How great would that be? We'd be in a much better place. Okay, this trend is happening elsewhere on the continent as well. After tax incentives were passed by the Kenyan government, there was a 500% increase in electric motorbikes in just 1 year. Ethiopia's authoritarian government has the ability to quickly implement policies, but still demonstrates how developing countries can make bold advancements in clean tech. An interviewee for that story made a great point. 30 years ago, it would have been hard to find someone who owned a phone. Now it's hard to imagine not having one. The same could be true for electric vehicles. Let's hope. All right, Mike, number 3.
All right. I believe Mr. Amrit Ramkumar is another guy we featured on this show. He's with the Wall Street Journal. Clean fuel startups were supposed to be the next big thing. Now they are collapsing. John.
Yeah, and this isn't just about sustainable aviation fuel. This story gets into really the challenge of green hydrogen more broadly too. But here are some of the high points. Several companies that make clean jet fuel have either shut down or scaled back their production, mostly due to aviation's high energy requirements on top of high interest rates, supply chain disruptions, and a recent rise in electricity rates because of grid upgrades. Plus, the production, transportation, and logistics prices have been really high, especially for hydrogen. As a result, many aviation and shipping companies have slowed their investments in clean fuel. Some hydrogen and biofuel companies have seen their shares drop as much as 90% since the IRA passed. I think even in the last week, Mike, we saw one of the proposed hydrogen that had a massive commitment and funding from the Department of Energy go bust, even with the companies being pretty heavily invested. So a tricky spot for that sector, which has always been seen as potentially falling into the hype cycle concern.
Yeah, I think I am to sustainable aviation fuels as you are to all new technologies. I'm a bit of a grump. Like I'm like, really?
As I am to all new technology. You make me seem like the old guy in the room.
You are how you act, my friend.
Yeah, I guess.
The key to clean jet fuels is finding a way to lower costs, even among all the high electricity rates and supply challenges. So here's the thing. Energy density is especially important in aviation. Since batteries store much less energy per pound than fuels do, the sector's been focusing on how to produce cleaner fuels. One startup that uses microbes to produce fuel feedstocks So they're prioritizing lower costs over climate outcomes, but their fuel could still be better for the climate than petroleum-based jet fuel. This might be the only solution for now as we navigate how to decrease pollution coming from aviation and shipping without it being too expensive. John, our fourth story.
Ivan penned one of our white whales of reporter guests from the New York Times titled, "Coal Power Defined This Minnesota Town. Can Solar Win It Over?" Mike Casey.
All right, speaking of white whales, John Engel, you owe...
Where's this going? No one knows where that's going.
You owe Vote Solar $5 because guess who said he'd come on the show?
I don't even remember. I don't even remember.
Coffin Post, Alexander Coffin said he would come on the show. So there you go.
Satcher Constantine, you got a big old Lincoln on its way towards your offices there in California.
All right. So,
and more than that, maybe I'll layer some on there because I do actually very much love Vote Solar and what they do, and Satcher Constantine's one of my favorites. But anyway, go on. When you make a bet like that, you make me sound so cheap by saying $5 to Vote Solar for John Engel.
Right. I'm trying to keep the bar low so you jump over it, man. I'm here
it's so low, buddy. it's scraping dirt at this point of this show.
In the small town of Becker, just north of Minneapolis, one of the nation's largest coal plants, Sherco, is being replaced by thousands of acres of solar panels in a test of long-duration batteries. Through the IRA, Minnesota utility Xcel Energy received tax credits that reduced the solar project's cost for taxpayers. The demonstration battery systems of this project will have the capacity to power the equivalent of 2,000 homes for up to 5 days. However, a local group, Save Our Sherco lawn signs throughout the community show residents support keeping the coal plant open, mostly due to the concerns that solar will occupy farmland. John, I want to point out something. According to USDA, we lose 4,931 acres of farmland each day, much of that due to suburban sprawl. In the time it takes for us to tape this show, we will have lost 51 acres to suburban sprawl. So those arguments really, in context, are kind of hard to hang your hat on, but this new plant presents an opportunity to show how clean energy can seamlessly replace fossil fuels without disrupting how power worked before. John?
Yeah, it's a good example for future communities facing coal plant closures. But let's also not be flippant about, how communities react to this news. It is a gigantic change. It is shocking. Yes. It is a part of their fabric. And a lot of these communities are seeing those overnight changes. Xcel Energy has closed 24 of its 36 coal-fired power plants across the country. And just a single burner in a power plant like Sherco can consume up to 120,000 pounds of coal per hour. Coal produced about 16% of the electricity last year, down from 52% in 1990. And although clean energy projects do create local jobs, the coal plant's old jobs can sometimes be hard to replace, mostly because of their need for different skill sets. But Becker is eligible to apply for funding from a $4.75 million state program to help attract new businesses and train workers for new jobs as we transition away from coal. Okay, Mike Casey, our fifth story and our guest this week.
Jon Reed from CNET, welcome, my friend. You got a piece, the U.S. power grid is a problem. Your house could help solve it. Super cool. Love the research you guys put together. We talked about it last week. Welcome to the show.
That's great.
If people have not read the story, which we want them to, what's the big takeaway?
Thanks, Mike and John. So this is kind of a look at virtual power plants, but from a consumer perspective. So I took a look at a few VPP programs around the country, toured Green Mountain Power up in Vermont, and kind of looking at everyone kind of sharing in the solution to a big problem, which is that growth of load on the grid, the transition to renewables, the intermittency of solar, all of that kind of comes together in the afternoon when everyone gets home, turns on their air conditioner, and the solar panels start to not work. And virtual power plants, kind of a growing solution to that, where utilities and aggregators are pulling together, whether it's home batteries or thermostats or water heaters, other appliances, to kind of shave those peaks. And I think what's important is they're not going to be, this isn't the entire solution to that problem, but it's one thing, and a lot of different companies are experimenting with different approaches, and I kind of outlined, they don't always agree on which way works, but they try different things. And then there's a story within the story, which is up in Vermont. There's one of those suburban housing developments that you were mentioning, but it's built. There's no fossil fuel infrastructure in it. It's all electrified, and every house is built to plug directly into GMP's virtual power plant, which was a really cool thing to see.
John, I love the story. I don't think anyone else has taken a human interest angle to virtual power plants. It's an otherwise pretty like wonky topic, but I loved how you drove into the community and kind of gave the sights and sounds like that just great journalism that sometimes we lose in clean tech, that we get so deep into the weeds, which is important, but you miss that impact. And I like how you paired that then with the technical aspects of this virtual power plant, because I think what Green Mountain Power is doing is actually pretty unique. And it goes back to Mary Powell, now the CEO of Sunrun, who launched that bring your own battery program and said, we'll give you $8,000 if you get your own, and then just let us control it some of the time. And the question is coming, don't worry, but this seems like one of the few real examples of what a virtual power plant could be and the impact it could have, whereas a lot of the other cases around the country seem to be, the demand response programs of old. Did this come off as innovative and unique in your research when they laid out that, yes, we are going to utilize those solar panels, and yes, we are going to dispatch those batteries to really make a big impact aside from just peak shaving?
Yeah, I think it is one example of a very innovative new model that other utilities and programs should look at. It's not the only one that other utilities and programs should look at. There's a great resource from RMI that they put out while I was reporting the story on examples of different VPP programs around the country and how they differ. And utilities and states and governments are not going to move at the same speed when it comes to addressing these problems. But I think they can learn from different examples of what's out there. And I also wanted to tell the story of that neighborhood because I think housing developers can learn from that example. So, I talk a lot about the more traditional demand response programs like the thermostat, change your temperature a degree, which has been around for 20 years. The water heaters, have been around in electric co-ops in the Midwest for 20 years. So there's a lot of variety in the types of programs. And I think if you're running a utility and you're thinking about this, you should look at all of the different examples that are out there and figure out what might work in your community first.
Especially because of the advantage that a utility has to seize this moment too. There are a lot of aggregators out there that are signing up customers and trying to enroll devices. If a utility implements DERMS, an enterprise DERMS platform, and has the ability to control and communicate with and settle transactions on their own, I see that as a great opportunity for them, and really pushes back on this whole utility death spiral thing that we've been talking about in this industry for like 15 years. Was it your sense that Green Mountain Power recognizes that this is not just kind of a kitschy grid thing, but something that they can make a significant impact with?
Yeah, I mean, they are extremely excited about this program. And I got the sense that, Green Mountain Power is not like every other utility.
No, they're nothing like
very
every
much,
other utility.
Very different from every other utility out there. But, it takes somebody like that to road test the ideas. So, I've kind of forgotten the question, but I do think it's beneficial to utilities to do this because otherwise they're going to be paying higher rates. Otherwise, they're going to have to be building gas peaker plants that no one's going to be a big fan of. And, it's going to drive up costs for their consumers. And I really took a focus on the actual consumer. These batteries are owned by Green Mountain Power, but Green Mountain Power is not draining the entire battery when they're doing an event. So you're essentially getting 3 Tesla Powerwalls or 2 Tesla Powerwalls or something. And you're getting use of some of them for backup, power, you're getting a lot of benefit from a consumer side. And I think that's an easy sell for any utility that wants to implement one of these programs.
John, question for you. We've got a friend of mine, Hala Blues. She runs Electric Power Engineers, and she uses a term called prosumer. That is the evolution of the consumer to not just being someone who buys and uses power, but whose lifestyle and the things that are part of their lifestyle actually form part of the grid. I don't think she originated the term, but she's pretty eloquent about it. Do you get the sense that this development relies on the existence of the prosumer who is charging his or her car or storing power for the grid?
In many cases, yes. So this is part of a package we did at CNET. We called it Energy Independence Month. And as I was reporting the story, I realized this is energy interdependence. This is everyone taking a part in the grid, and that it does require you to be involved. So it's going to take people who are interested in playing a part in the grid, playing a part in the electric system. That's a particular type of person. But if you present people with those opportunities, they may jump at it.
John, we're just about out of time. We need to get to our Cleantecher of the Week.
Yeah, this week's Cleantecher of the Week is Jim Kapsis, CEO of the Ad Hoc Group, who recently wrote about his 531-mile trip from Virginia to Maine in an electric vehicle. Jim wrote about his experience traveling the long electric miles, both the good and bad. We'll link to his piece in our YouTube bio, so congratulations to Jim.
All right, want to thank our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez, and Claire Quirin and Alex Peterson for helping gather these stories.
Yeah, and thanks to Jon Reed for joining us. What a well-reported story and really interesting stuff. And on the point of utilities getting involved with virtual power plants, we did an episode of Factor This many months ago with the CEO of Sonnen US about Rocky Mountain Power doing a bring your own battery, 8,000 battery installation, and as a result was able to do I think it was 7 or 8 different grid functions. So if you want some deeper content there, we've got some related content there for you. You can read all of the articles we discussed this week, including Jon Reed's, by checking out the links in the episode description. And Mike, we will see you next week.
See you, friend. Take care.